Welcome everybody. Welcome to our webinar today that we are co-hosting with Paytron, Outsourcing Accounts Payable. This webinar is aimed to try and help you solve the pains when it comes to accounts payable, which we know in each phase of an entrepreneurial journey of your business, of your ventures journey, it can be quite complicated, but luckily there are things out there that can make it easier for you. And we'd like to show you what we like to use today. Might do just a quick, very brief disclaimer. This isn't tax or legal advice. Please seek tax or legal advice, taking your specific situation into consideration. Just a little bit about myself and Fullstack. Hi, I'm Tanya, CEO Tax Manager at Fullstack Advisory. And we're a next level accounting firm that looks after high growth, high achievers, and people who are genuinely trying to change the world by using best practice, inventing new things. That's our ideal client. My co-host, we've got Ingrid here. Hi, Ingrid.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the invite and being here today to support you and your clients.
Awesome.
I'll give a little bit of a background about Paytron.
Thanks.
So Paytron, similar to, I think, a lot of your clients and maybe some of the people on the call, is also a startup, a fintech. So we just over 2 years old. So we've been through a lot of the pain. I think some of you would have been through as customers as well. But we really are quite revolutionary in terms of transforming the way things are done between your traditional sort of banking world and your accounting system. So even if you have something awesome like Xero, which is a cloud-based accounting system, often the processes between the bank and the accounting system, the cloud-based accounting system, are still very manual. And what Paytron really seeks to do is to eliminate all of those manual tasks, to digitize and automate that. Obviously, that prevents things like human error. It prevents malicious fraud and deliberate hacking or attacking, and to try and make it so that as an SME, from a customer perspective, you can actually run your business entirely in the cloud with your awesome backend accounting system, your awesome accounting partner, and Paytron, and all of your data will integrate and everything will sync in real time, and you can manage your business digitally and remotely.
Yeah, that's a fantastic summary.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe just because we are new, it takes a little bit of explaining because there's nothing really out there that's ever done this before. So it takes a little bit of explaining, and between Tanya and I, hopefully we'll be able to get that across to you today.
Awesome. So just some housekeeping rules. Everyone's been automatically muted. Please use the Q&A section to ask any questions. We will be looking at them throughout the webinar, and if it suits, we will provide an answer. Otherwise, we'll leave some time at the end to go through your questions and hopefully answer them to the best of our ability. Then also, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll share the slides and the recording afterwards with all registrants. So yeah, agenda. What we'll quickly go through is just best practice for accounts payable. We'll show you how it works in real life, what to watch out for when you're outsourcing, and then we'll have the Q&A section at the end. The biggest problem we see with accounts payable is that there's no specific process in place. And we know in startup and scale up world, and it gets a little bit hectic. You do what is necessary just to keep things ticking along, to make it work, hopefully. And what we see a lot is ad hoc payments, things going through without having proper process in place. It's very hard to expand your team and potentially divide up the different roles. And so I'd say that the number one suggestion I would have to try and get your accounts payable process as streamlined as possible is to start by actually having a process. Now, the risks with not having an actual process in place, there are many, but we'll go through a few today. First one is internal or external fraud. Unfortunately, money makes people do silly things, and there are people who maliciously try and get their hands on your hard-earned funds. It's a massive risk, and it's a risk that you should be or would be hopefully aware of. And without proper processes in place, it's very hard to find these internal and external fraud situations. Then you've also got over or underpayment of tax and or GST. So if the GST isn't captured correctly, or if you are paying someone who has claimed to be registered for GST and in the end they were actually not registered for GST, not many people know this, but you then cannot claim that GST back from the ATO. You have to try and recover it from the person that you've already paid it to. And if they were malicious in the beginning to tell you that they are GST registered, chances are slim that you're going to get that cash back. The next one is double payments, and this can be accidental and malicious. Accidental payments happen when you receive, for example, an invoice and a statement, or you receive an invoice and a receipt, and you just don't realize, because of the craziness of what it is to run a business, you don't realize that you've already paid for this and you pay again. And most of the time it will happen on smaller invoices, maybe $1,000, $2,000, something that you don't really take a lot of notice on, but those add up over time. And unfortunately, most accidental overpayments don't really get recognized and refunded like we would like to see. So it's always good to have something in place that's checking for double payments, even if it is just an alert telling you that you've paid a similar amount to a similar provider within a time frame, which we found that Paytron does that and can keep us up to date. So it's one of the things that we really appreciate. Another big risk of not having a proper accounts payable process in place is inaccurate reporting. In startup world, cash flow is king. So you always want to know exactly what your burn rate is and what your runway is going to be. And if you are not aware of which expenses are up and coming, which bills you still have to pay out in a certain period of time, then your reports are going to be inaccurate and you're going to have surprises. So having an accounts process in place, making sure that who is owed what, will just make sure that you have no surprises. Then also, if you're doing stakeholder reporting, say you're doing board reports or you're sending management reports to your investors, then those liabilities, the liabilities on your balance sheet might be understated because you did not capture those accounts payable bills properly. Then the last one is cash flow surprises. Now, cash flow surprises can come in multiple facets, but the number one is you didn't know that amount had to be paid at a certain time. The great thing that we love about Paytron is that you can schedule payments, even international payments, to go out in a future date. And you would then at all time know how much is still to be paid out of which account for how much. So there's no cash flow surprise. And if you decide to pay on the due date, then you can process it right now today, and it will only be paid on the due date. So you don't have to sit around and try and wait for the due date to come before you can trigger that payment. It can be actioned now, so you don't forget about it. You don't get reminders saying, oh, you're late. And then with that also comes, there are no late payment penalties because you have paid on time. The way that I like to suggest to my clients to prevent these risks is to have a segregation of duties. And it's very hard when you are a small team, especially if you're completely remote. Now, back in the olden days, when we had an office, when everybody was working in a physical office, you would have an accounts payable process where it would be maybe the receiver receives the goods. Let's say we purchased some goods. The receiver received the goods. They check them off as being correct. That invoice then physically went into an in-tray, probably, to go to the accounts payable process. The accounts payable person will then do their checks and balances to make sure, stamp it approved with a physical stamp, and then that would go to the person who's actually doing the physical payments out of the bank account. Then that whole packet with all of the supporting documents, the statement, everywhere everyone has signed, that would then usually go to the executive or to whoever has approval rights on the bank, and they would then, based on that supporting document, they would then go, yes, pay this, no, don't pay this. Now everything is digital and it's a little bit harder. I don't know if anyone has tried running a business on Slack and a similar platform. It works great for operational, not great for accounts payable. Things get lost way too quickly. And so the segregation that I suggest for all intents and purposes, it's a completely virtual situation. Someone from your team would request an expense, say, hey, we need a contractor to do XYZ. They need to build this part of the API for us, please. Then the executives or the department head would approve that request, say, we can incur that cost please go ahead. Sometimes this is accompanied by a purchase order. If it's a bigger company and it's a bigger purchase, it will be accompanied by a purchase order, and that will be at this stage. Up next, once the work has been done, the team would get the bill from the provider, either before or after the work has been done, and they would then say, yes, this work really did occur, and send it for payment, or this payment needs to be made and send it for payment. Then the executive or the department head, the accounts payable people. So in this instance, if it was outsourced, it would be us. We process that for payment, get it ready, make sure the bank accounts are ready, everything is loaded and good to go. And then the executive or the department head, depending on who's in control of the budget, they would then approve that payment for it to physically go out of the bank account. And there are many ways to implement this workflow. There are strenuous ways, but this is why we at Fullstack, for our clients where we are asked to run the accounts payable process for them, this is why we've chosen Paytron. Fun story, we met Paytron at an accounting show back in Sydney, and we were having lunch, and I read their banner and everything that they can do, and I left my lunch on the table. I said to Stuart, I'm sorry, I have to go. I need to see if this is for real. I need to go and test them. So I asked a bunch of technical questions, and they blew me away with their answers. And it's just been onwards and upwards since then. So I'll let Ingrid tell you about their partners and certifications and why we think you should trust them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, again, awesome introduction. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, so we are relatively new. I'm just over 2 years old now, but we actually are a regulated entity, which is quite important. So we do payments, domestic payments, international payments, BPay payments. So you can do everything from one platform. And we connect that infrastructure, as I said, between your sort of traditional banking environment and your awesome accounting system like Xero. So we've got a number of partnerships in that space with Xero. We also have a similar partnership with KeyPay or Employment Hero, which is the payroll software. And we're in the process of establishing the same type of integration with Xero, with MYB Advanced and NetSuite, which is for slightly bigger clients. But basically, as a regulated entity, we can both take deposits, and we're also licensed to do FX. So we're not a bank, but we can take deposits and we do the payments ourselves. So all of our domestic payments we make instantly in real time. And our international payments we make within 24 hours to up to 180 countries around the world. And obviously, if it is an invoice payments, that's you paying a supplier overseas, or potentially you're exporting and you're needing to get paid, we actually do that FX conversion ourselves. So if you want to pay the invoice instantly, we do it at the spot rate, and we give very good rates for SMEs because we believe in being fair and transparent on pricing. Or alternatively, as Tanya was saying earlier, you can actually schedule that payment, and you can say, I want to approve the payment today, and I actually want to lock that FX rate in today because the FX rate's really good, but I don't want to pay it until the end of the month, or I don't want to pay it until next month or 2 months time. So it puts you in control of your cash flow. So you don't have these overnight batch processes where you have bank cutoff times and you're having to submit ABA files the day before, and it takes an overnight process, and then you only pay the day after, and potentially you're losing out on some kind of discount from your payers, etc., etc. You're in control of your cash flow. You decide exactly when you want to pay. You pay it instantly, or you approve the payment today, and you actually schedule it for the day that you actually want to make that payment.
Yeah. And maybe just if you can take us, Ingrid, through everything available, because right now we're focused very much on accounts payable, but Paytron does so much more. Can you take us through just everything that it does?
Yeah, we do. As I said, we do domestic payments, international payments, as well as BPay. They could be single individual payments, or they could be bulk batch payments. And really, it's a very simplified workflow for approvals. So once your invoice gets approved, whether that invoice is sitting in Xero, or you could email and upload the invoice to us, and we'll actually scan the data in, scan the invoice in, and we'll push that data back into Xero in real time. So we've got the OCR capability as well for, as I said, domestic, international payments, as well as BPay. And we actually do the reconciliation as well. So once we make that payment, we will auto reconcile with Xero. So we're eliminating both ABA files as well as bank feeds. And that just gets rid of all the human error and the manual tasks, but it also just saves a heap of time. And then we do payroll as well. So with KeyPay, if you are using KeyPay, which is a pretty awesome payroll software, you can actually approve the payroll in KeyPay and send the file straight into Paytron. and pay your employees instantly. And that facilitates something called segregation of duties. So you can have somebody who's enabled or allowed to actually approve payroll, but somebody different is the person who's approved and allowed to actually make the payments. And that person may or may not be allowed to actually see the details of the salaries. So you're in control of who can see what, who can do what in your account. And you can say, I want my accountant to be able to create and view invoices, but I don't want them to be able to actually approve payments. I want to be the only person who can actually do that. So that segregation of duties exists. You as the client are always in control. And then more recently, we've also added corporate cards, they're virtual credit cards, and expense management. So we can offer anywhere from $5,000 up to $50,000 line of credit. And you can actually do the expense management piece as well. So we do have a mobile app, so your employees can actually take photos of their receipts, upload them straight into the platform or into the mobile app, code them. And once that expense report gets approved, it can be submitted straight into Xero and it will auto reconcile. So again, it eliminates all the manual processes and it saves a heap of time in terms of that auto reconciliation. And then we do multi-currency accounts. So as an Australian company, you will automatically be given an AUD account, but there's another 33 currency accounts you can actually open at the click of a button. So you don't have to submit forms. You don't have to put paperwork down or collateral or anything like that. You literally just select the currency you want to either receive in or make payments from, and you can manage your entire sort of treasury from, a digital cloud-based platform. And then finally, we've got the OCR capability as well. So whether it's an expense or it's an invoice, everything can actually come through to Paytron, and we will push that data straight back into Xero. So really the feedback we've gotten over the last 2 years in working with our accounting and our bookkeeping partners and also with their clients is, wow, this is such an awesome platform in the cloud. That actually means I can do everything now with just my back-end accounting system. I actually don't need all of these additional apps, and I don't need to pay all of these additional subscriptions. I can actually do so much now just with Paytron and Xero, and of course my accounting partner or my bookkeeping partner. So we're trying to pull everything into this digital cloud-based platform, and the workflows that we have available sit across all of those functions, whether it's payroll, corporate cards, invoice payments, etc. Everything is digital and automated.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the main reason why we enjoy Paytron is the fact that for us to be able to do something on behalf of a client, we need to ensure that there's a segregation of duty, of course, because there's a risk element involved for us. And we found this to be the only way that we could practically implement this service without too much risk and too much heartache.
Yeah.
So I think
Sorry, Tanya, just one maybe on that point, because I didn't really mention this earlier, but you might go into it next as well, is because we're eliminating all of those manual tasks, and because we're reading the information straight off the invoice, or potentially we're pulling it through from Xero if it's already in Xero, we can also do all those fraud checks. So check for, number one, duplicates, like you mentioned earlier, to make sure you don't pay the same thing twice, but also check for, have any of those beneficiary details or supplier details changed? If it's a supplier we've paid in the past, can we check those beneficiary details? Can we check that they're ABN registered? Can we check that they're GST registered? Do all of those checks up front by eliminating all of those manual tasks to prevent either human error or deliberate malicious fraud.
Yeah, I think that takes us nicely into the next section where we would go through the practical application. So what does it look like in real life? So it's all nice thinking about how hypothetically this can do everything, but what does it look like in real life if you were to outsource your accounts payable process? So today, to make it simple, we're just going to work on the dedicated patron email. So you get an email address where you send all of your bills that need to be paid. And it's a flow that we're going to work with today. You get Patron will supply you with the unique email address. When you email that in, the patron mastermind in the back end does all of the great things that Ingrid just mentioned. So it picks up the invoice details, supplier details, banking details. It does an ABN check and it does a GST registration check. And so it will flag certain things. It will give you suggestions of if there's something that they think you should look at. But the great thing is if you're outsourcing, we do all of that. We go through, we use the AI and we use the advanced capabilities of the back end of Paytron to make sure that payments that we're submitting for you to approve is only a payment that has been vetted both manually and by best technology, I think, out there. And it means that what we can add as a service is we're not manually clicking buttons. we are actually adding value to the service that we're doing. We're not just data capturers. And so pretend this is us, this is Fullstack as your accountant bookkeeper. It can be your internal accountant bookkeeper as well. So all of this gets done on an ad hoc basis, or a week, say on a weekly schedule or a fortnightly schedule. We submit the payments for approval. You get an in-app notification. You also get an email notification. So we know a lot of people don't want to get an email each and every time a payment is submitted, especially at high volume. For some clients, we just have them write a rule where that goes into a certain app and we put it in their calendar on say fortnightly in their calendar. There is a reminder to approve all of the payments in the app. And so I'll show you how easy it is to approve for you as the client. So this is what your screen would look like when you hop in. This is the actual invoice that's been uploaded. So it's the one that's been OCR'd, so you can double check everything, make sure you're happy with the amount that's being paid. You can see here it's being paid in AUD, but they'll receive USD. Once you're happy, you just go and approve and it'll process. If it's a future dated payment, then it will sit in flight. So it will wait for the time to come. And if not, it would just take the money out of the bank immediately. And you just keep going on. We'd like to open up the floor for some questions. We know it is a very complex area. If anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask, we'll just quickly hop over to the Q&A section, see if there's anything specific that's been asked. So one of the questions we usually get around implementation. So one of our main questions is, how long does it take to implement something like this? And Ingrid, I think you can take us through onboarding.
Yeah, sure. The good thing is there's no technical implementation. We've done all of that already. We've done all that hard work with Xero. So we have a very dynamic real-time API with Xero. So we can both pull data and push data in real time or instantly. So there's nothing required there. The only thing we do need to do, obviously we are a regulated entity with ASIC. And so we do have to comply with anti-money laundering and KYC, or know your customer requirements. So the client needs to complete a digital registration process for a Paytron account. And that is an entirely digital process. So it's just basic things like your ABN, your company name, your registered business address. And then the main shareholder, so anybody who has 25% or more shares, would need to do their ID verification. And that would really just be uploading a driver's license or a passport potentially straight into the platform. We do all the verification checks in the background and we approve your account. And that's really it. Once your account is approved, you get access. You then invite your accountant or your bookkeeping partner onto your account. You decide what level of access you'd like them to have. And you click a button and you connect to your Xero account. And as soon as you do that, your invoices will start to sync immediately and data will be pushed and pulled dynamically or in real time.
Yeah, and I can say it takes approximately a week is what we've seen the practical implementation takes. So once a client has expressed interest and said, this is the way we want to go, getting everything ready on their side, getting everything ready on Paytron's side, it takes about a week. But the great thing is anybody who has tried to give access to a bank account will know it takes a lot longer than a week. There's a lot more involved. And even if it's not through an accounting partner, even if you're just using it internally, changing access is a lot easier than changing access to, say, an online banking platform. You as the owner, you have control. And you can add and release or partners, accounting partners, bookkeeping partners very easily. So it just streamlines it, and it's definitely worth having a look at it. With regards to I'm just having a look at the questions. With regards to the cards, Ingrid, is it only available as a credit card or can it be treated as a prepaid debit card?
It could be either. We do give a company a $5,000 credit limit. Typically, you'd need to be a company that's 2 years old. However, we actually do support a lot of startups as well. We're a startup ourselves and we support a lot of our fellow startups. We're all still based in Stone and Chalk. Work with a lot of our partners, so we can absolutely support startups. I think the lowest value for an employee virtual card is $100. And then it's up to you if you want to use the full allocation of the credit limit, or if you want to just dynamically top up the employee cards from funds that are sitting in your Australian transaction. That's entirely up to you. So you can either use the credit limit that's available, or you can just top it up from your own funds.
Great. That was very helpful. I haven't got any other questions at this stage. So I think we'll end this one now. If anyone has any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to us. We've got our QR codes on screen. You can send an email, connect with us on our socials, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have and help you change the way accounts payable, not have it be painful. Thanks, Ingrid. It's been great having you.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tanya.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.